Let's go to the Tom's River Volkswagen Sports Hotline and welcome into the locker room, Comcast Sportsnet, Derrick Gunn. Derrick, welcome into the locker room.
Morning. How you doing?
All right, Derrick, and it's OTAs are wrapping up, so you get a little time off.
Yeah, just the weekend. Then we go back at it again on Monday. We have access to the players Monday and next Friday. So yeah, just a little quick breather.
Well, of course, we get to see you every day, daily on Comcast Sportsnet Quick Slants, which is a great show. And if I want to know anything about the Eagles, that's when I tune in to you, Derrick.
I appreciate it. Whoever's on with me, whether it's Ruben, Frank, Dave Zangaro, Zach Berman, whoever it is, we just try to have fun with it, man. It beats working for a living is what I tell people all the time.
You got the greatest job in the world, Derrick. Hey, listen, Derrick, you're down there. We're talking to the Eagles, and you're close with the team. Talk to us about, first and foremost, in my mind, I want to know about Carson Wentz. He's just coming off laser eye surgery. How's he look?
Yeah, he spent the offseason working with that Adam Dideau out in California, who's worked with some incredible quarterbacks. He said he wanted to work more so on his footwork, more so than anything else. The one thing I noticed, obviously you can't tell a whole lot right now, is that his spiral looks a lot tighter. His release over the top looks a little bit quicker. You really can't tell much in terms of the footwork, and obviously until you have people chasing you around trying to rip your head off.
Right.
But when out there and it just helmets and shorts, it's really difficult to get a true gauge exactly what you're looking at, and I don't think you really can until we get to training camp and of course the preseason games. But the big thing is now instead of coming here after the draft, he missed some time last summer, assumed the role as a starter 8 days before the season. He was a number 3 quarterback up until 8 days before, hit the ground running. Now he's had a full off season to absorb Doug Peterson's offense, and I think that's the biggest help for him.
Derrick, what's the atmosphere like down there? Obviously, like you said, they just have their helmets and their pads on, or shoulder pads, I guess, and whatnot, shorts. But this is a time to work on the team chemistry, and guys are probably jovial a little bit. What's the atmosphere like down at the OTAs?
I tell you what, there's so much excitement because of the influx of new personnel. You bring in an Alshon Jeffrey, you bring in a LeGarrette Blunt, Timmy Jernigan, Torrey Smith. You bring in guys like that. They're deeper at the offensive line than they've been in quite some time. And obviously everybody's excited about the prospects. But, Howie Roseman told us several times during the offseason he didn't want to approach this thing in terms of retooling it as a Band-Aid format. Well, in a way, that's exactly what he did. He went out and he hired some big-name players for a year. Hopefully they've had a pretty good draft. 2 good young cornerbacks. Well, obviously Sidney Jones, we have to wait and see if he'll ever even play this year. But everybody likes what they've done. The enthusiasm is high, and you look at the way this team is constructed right now. This is not a rebuilding mode. This is a team that Howie Roseman and Joe Douglas have assembled to compete and try to win right now.
Hey, Derrick, this is Josh. I want to ask you, we mentioned the second year. It's also the second year for Doug Peterson. And, we heard from different, guys who were down at the practice this week that he was yelling at you guys when you were trying to get out of the rain. And, it seems like Doug Peterson is kind of, stepping into the second year a little bit more focused, a little bit more, shall I say, set in his shoes as the head coach.
Well, and he should be. But now we have to wait and see how much Doug Peterson improves when it comes to game day decisions, play calling, strategic decisions, fourth down decisions, things like that. Obviously, he went through a few growing pains in terms of trying to be aggressive, sometimes being a little bit too aggressive in wrong situations. So hopefully he doesn't lose that edge, because we can sit back as lounge chair quarterbacks and critique and say what we would have done time and time again, but he's the one that's got to make these decisions and live with them. So and he's in a situation working with Howie Roseman, who he's known for a long time. He's been a breath of fresh air around that organization, considering what they had before him in Chip Kelly, which was completely the opposite. So from a management structure, they get a coach who's friendly with everybody in the building. They get a coach who they can make suggestions to. They get a coach who can relate to players because he was a former player. And I haven't heard one player say anything negative about a Doug Peterson. Every player I've talked to said they can talk to him about football as well as other issues off the field as well. So right now, everything is Camelot over there.
Derrick, you've been around this team for a long time. Talk about the importance of what you just said about Doug Peterson, about having a coach that nobody in the locker room is saying anything negative about. Because we heard with Chip Kelly so much negativity from different people around the organization. And you see in other organizations, is that if even there's just a tiny bit of toxicity, it can ruin an entire locker room. So talk about the importance of having a guy like Doug Peterson that the players respect like they do.
Well, when you have a so-called player coach, in a lot of cases, guys put the lines of their life for you day in and day out. When you treat them like they're a bunch of college boys and you run them in the ground in December, and these are grown men. If you're winning, that's one thing. If you're not winning, obviously, all of a sudden the wheels fall off, and that's exactly what happened in Chip Kelly's case. And so now they've done a complete 360. They got a guy in here who understands, just like Andy Reid did, when to push them, when to back off, and the veteran players, especially guys up there like a Jason Peters, when it gets to November, December, you know how to back off. You know when he straps it up on Sunday, he's going to give you everything he's got. He's earned his stripes. He's earned his medals in the National Football League. One of the best to play the position that he has. So when you get guys like that, the Brent Sellecks, they respect that. That a coach knows how to treat you, and they know that you know and understand what you need to do from start to finish to keep your body at a high working mechanism. And that's something that was sorely missed over the 2+ seasons that Chip Kelly was here.
We're talking with Derrick Gunn of Comcast Sportsnet. You can catch him Monday through Friday on Quick Slants at 6 p.m. on Comcast Sportsnet. And Derrick, with all the rookies, with the draft and some of the rookies that are in camp, anybody standing out? I mean, you got Donnell Pumphrey, and of course the Eagles just inked Derek Barnett to a nice deal, the 14th overall pick. Sidney Jones is limping around. Anybody? How these guys adapting to their first pro camp, and what's your impression?
Well, two guys in particular, Derek Barnett and Lane Johnson, who I talk to a lot, has been so impressed with this kid's ability off the snap, his ability to get low, coming off the edge, and not lose any momentum when he's coming around the edge. A lot of people have really been impressed with Rasul Douglas in terms of how quickly he's grasping the defensive concept. Corey Ellen, I think, is one of the better defensive back coaches in the National Football League. And Corey is very high on this kid. I don't think he's going to start right away unless, Patrick Robinson or Jalen Mills get hurt in training camp or preseason. But I think this is a kid, he's got the length, he's got the ability. I think this is a kid who could be pushing for significant playing time by the second half of the season. But when you look at this kid, Derek Barnett, so far from what Jim Schwartz has told us and other offensive linemen, this kid is everything he's been built up to be in terms of that edge rusher that was so sorely missed on this defense. Now, how that translates into which side he's going to play on, because if you put him on that right side, he's going to be over the left tackles in the National Football League. And, oh, by the way, left tackles are usually your best offensive lineman, the most highest paid offensive lineman along an offensive line. So it depends on which side they feel he's better suited on. And I can also see once he gets acclimated to playing at this level, at the speed, understanding the concepts, and getting it down to his size, I can see them moving him around along the offensive line, trying to find that weak link in the picket fence to attack from. But again, it depends on his development. It depends exactly on what Jim Schwartz envisions him being for this defensive front. But obviously this kid has unlimited potential. Now we have to wait and see how quickly they can tap into it.
Derrick, one thing I really you can feel it comes across the TV is that the guys really respect you and you have a great relationship. Seems to me it comes across on the television. That's why I value your opinion. It seems like you get really, you get more information and says, another reporter, you're right there. You have a good relationship. The guys seem to trust you.
The one thing that I've always tried to do, and I've covered, I've lived coast to coast. I've covered the Chargers, the Packers, the Steelers, and now the Eagles. The one constant I've always tried to maintain is to be upfront with guys and to be honest with them. Whenever they've given me information, I tell you the hardest thing to do is to sit there and talk to a guy, and he gives you information that you know that's eventually going to come out, and he tells you don't say anything.
Uh-huh.
And and that,
You're sitting
man,
on something.
It's that itch. It's that itch. And sure enough, eventually it comes out somewhere else. And then you go back to the locker room, you look at the player, and the guy goes, "Hey, I'm sorry, but I needed you to keep it quiet for a while." But then on top of that, that's also when you get other information that they'll give to you, leak to you, that you use.
Right.
And they will continuously talk to you to help you get a better feel, better understanding of what's going on behind the outer working mechanisms of what this thing is all about. And and I've taken pride in that fact that I've never, whether it's a front office person, whether it's a trainer, a security guard, whoever it may be, I have never dimed out anybody, And if nothing else, that's always the one thing I've wanted to maintain, that ability to trust, get that trust. Because as you see on our post-game show, it helps also to get players to come out and talk to you. If you're a guy who's constantly backdooring people, it defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do in the overall umbrella and scheme of things. So sometimes I have to give a lot to get a little, but in the final analysis, most times it's worth it.
Well, it works, Derrick, because I tell you, I really, when I watch the post-game show at Quick Slants, it comes through, and I really appreciate that. And that's why we have you on, man, because you can't get any closer to the Eagles than Derrick Gunn, that's for sure.
I appreciate it, man.
Hey, Derrick, top to bottom, rate the draft. I mean, there's a lot of people saying that, this draft was just okay. Then you hear a lot of people. Every draft is great, but overall, what's your opinion of how the Eagles did this year with their draft?
Well, you know what? We won't know. We can't really grade it until we see how the pieces have performed on the field. For me, I'm more of an offensive-minded person. When you look at the past playoffs, outside of Houston, how many teams went to the playoffs based on the strength of their defense? Not many.
Right.
Atlanta got to a Super Bowl because of its offense. Green Bay got to the conference championship because of its offense. You do need some defense. And you look at New England. New England's never, very seldom has New England had a great defense, but look at the offensive structure they have. No matter who they plug into that offense, the mechanism never breaks down. So going into the draft, I was looking for the Eagles to take a wide receiver. But when three wide receivers went in the first 9 picks of the draft, well, now you got to start addressing certain needs. And that's exactly what the Eagles did. They knew they needed to upgrade the edge rushing situation. They knew they needed to get younger and hopefully better at the cornerback situation, because what they had last year didn't work.
It was horrible.
And so that's exactly what they did. So they addressed those needs. Now we have to wait and find out if they pick the right players for what Jim Schwartz wants to do and how he wants to build this thing. Now, obviously, we're not going to get to see Sidney Jones for a while, but hopefully Jalen Mills improve. And I'm a big Jalen Mills fan. What he lacks in speed, that kid has that SEC swagger about him, doesn't back down from anything. And as Corey Unlin has told me, a lot of times you don't have to be lightning fast to be an above-average cornerback in the National Football League. It's about playing the angles and anticipating. And, he said, I'll never forget when Corey told me during training camp last summer, he said, "I'm telling you, watch this kid, Jalen Mills. I think he has an opportunity to be something special in the National Football League." Now, of course, obviously, he's still going to go through some growing pains.
Sure.
Now, Patrick Robinson on the other side, I think, is just a quick fix. He's a guy who was a former first-round pick. He's never consistently lived up to that first-round billing, but he's an upgrade over Leotis McElvin.
Sure.
And so with this kid, again, you got, Ron Brooks is coming back from a major quad injury. I thought he was a really good slot corner, nickel corner type. So hopefully he can hold up for the whole season. And if you can bring this kid Douglas along quick enough so that he can be a viable entity in the rotation sooner rather than later, you got a pretty good secondary. Maybe not a great secondary. You got a great safety tandem, but maybe not a great cornerback situation. But it could be a pretty
improved.
good cornerback situation. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what.
If your front four does a job and gets home, if your front four, the whole key is if the front four can get home. If the front four gets home, it does take a lot of pressure off that back seven. Well,
I'll tell you what, Derrick, with the Phillies in the tank, we have nothing left to look forward to than our Philadelphia Eagles.
My goodness. I think they should bring up the entire Lehigh Valley roster and just send the current Phillies back down to Lehigh and let them work at AAA. Man.
All right. So, Derrick, we really appreciate you taking the time to call into the show, and we love watching you on Quick Slants, and continue success, and we love watching you, and thank you for calling, and we appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Thank you for having me on.
All right, Derrick Gunn, everybody on the Tom's River Volkswagen Sports Hotline.